Welcome back to another episode of Spirit of an Athlete. I'm your host, Amanda Smith, and on this episode, I interview Danielle Reedy, who is an Olympian, a coach, a speaker, a podcast host, and an author. You're going to get to hear about all of those things in this podcast during the Olympics 2024. Hope you enjoy this episode. Danielle Reedy, thank you so much for being on Spirit of an Athlete, especially during this awesome time every 4 years when we get to talk Olympics.
So excited to be here. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so when were you in the Olympics and what sport did you do?
I was in the 2016 Olympic Games. I competed for Australia. I was part of the synchronized swimming team in both of the events, the free and the tech routine.
Ooh, okay. I haven't had very many swimmers on my podcast, and I have never had a synchronized swimmer on. So what's the difference between those two events?
Yeah, good question. So for teams that are like, if for yourself, like softball, soccer, you're obviously competing in, games against other people until you get out, which is very basic explanation. But other sports like swimming, like gymnastics, like synchronized swimming, there's actually different events. Like you'll see, everyone's pretty familiar with Michael Phelps. He would do 50-meter freestyle or 100 meters or 100-meter medley. And so there's lots of different events, which equals different opportunities to get medals, basically. And so we had the same thing in synchronized swimming. There's 4 events. There's 2 team events, 2 duet events. And the tech routine is, if you've ever watched figure skating, I kind of use that as an example. We have technical elements that we have to perform, and the routines aren't as exciting to watch, but they're very much more technical, and you're graded basically and judged on each element. And then the free routines are a lot more artistic. If you've ever watched like ice dancing, which is a different event from ice skating in the Winter Olympics, they are basically like creative expression, and you get to do whatever you want to do. And so there's many more events that we have in synchronized swimming, but at the Olympic Games, those are the 2 events that we have the opportunity to medal in.
Okay, and then you weren't just at the 2016 Olympics, you've also been in World Championships.
Yes, 3 World Championships, which is a pretty big deal in the sporting world. I think other people don't care. Like, I'm so proud of that, but other people are just like, Olympics. And I'm like, no, there's other things. So I competed in the 2015, 17, and 2019 World Championships for Australia as well.
Oh my gosh. And in those same 2 events, or were you in more events for those?
The first 2, I was in the same events. And then the 3rd World Championships, I was in the mixed duet event. And so I wasn't in the team that year. I was in the mixed duet, which was a really cool opportunity. Mixed duet got allowed into the World Championship scheme in 2015. Synchronized swimming is this like really awesome and backward sport where we actually had inequality for men for many years. So there was men that wanted to compete at high levels, but they weren't actually allowed to at the international level until 2015, when they were started to be allowed into the sport at an international level. And so from 2015 onwards, there was a lot more men that started to, have the opportunity to come up in the sport. And there was one particular man in Australia who came from swimming, and they were really wanting to get Australia in the mixed duet event. It's just kind of like a really iconic thing to get your country in that. And so they asked me if I would want to be his duet partner, which I was super honored to be asked. And that was a really cool other experience. And we got a lot of media in Australia around that too, because we were the first in history for Australia ever to compete in the mixed duet event. America actually has like one of the longest standing male synchronized swimmers. His name is Bill May. He is like an absolute legend in the synchronized swimming world. He's from California, and he actually works for Cirque du Soleil, and he's in Las Vegas as a male synchronized swimmer there. And so he was actually a huge pioneer in synchronized swimming for men to get into the sport, and he's from California. So kind of cool fun fact.
I have a feeling a lot of people are going, wait. We've heard her talk a bit now.
Yes.
She doesn't have an Australian accent.
I don't.
How did you end up on the Australia team?
Oh, so not having an Australian accent is like the bane of my existence. I really wish that I did, but I will give you a bit of a background. So I might come from two parents that are Australian. They moved from Sydney, Australia to Vancouver, Canada many, many years ago, where I was born and raised. And through a crazy sequence of events, which led me to going throughout the sport, not ever really being the best athlete, retiring at 18 years old, getting a crazy opportunity when I was 21. To come to Australia and try out for the Australian team based on the fact that I have dual citizenship. I took this insane leap of my life to move to Australia, leave everything behind, drop out of university, and try out for the Australian team. And that is what ended up helping me get on the team and competing there and living there for many years and having Australian citizenship. And then, I mean, a fun fact, I also met my husband in Australia as well. So the fun joke of the family is like everyone around me has an Australian accent except for me. Like all my friends, my husband, my parents, like my aunts and uncles, and I have this little Canadian accent. So that's kind of how that all happened. I really turned that big beautiful story into like 30 seconds, but I just wanted to give you a summary because a lot of people do ask me that as well.
I could imagine. I mean, generally when I have Australians on, they're saying "Good day, mate," and I'm here for it, and
Yeah.
that's not coming out of your face. So
I wish.
thank you for explaining that. But that did bring in more questions. So you retired from the sport at 18.
I did, yeah.
Okay. Bridge that gap for
Yeah,
us. How do you retire and then end up on the Olympic team?
I know. It's
or on the world championship team?
It's quite funny. So I started in synchronized swimming when I was 8 years old. I was too tall to be a gymnast. I'm 5'9". That's basically massive if you're in the gymnastics world. And I was always a good swimmer. I mean, my parents are Aussie. Everyone in Australia swims. But swimming is really boring. You just kind of go back and forth, back and forth. And so my mom chucked me in this little sport of synchronized swimming, and I fell in love with it after a couple of years. Not only the actual technicality and the challenges that came in having to learn how to do it, but also the fact that I got to work in a team. I loved that. And I mean, as a little girl, I got to wear a sparkly bathing suit and have makeup on when I performed. And I was like, yes, I'm here for it, right? Basically like dance in the water, but 100 times harder. And so I continued my sport all throughout my elementary and high school years up until I was in grade 12. The only challenge that I had is that had a great attitude. I was a great team player, but I just was never the most talented. I was like the least likely to succeed. I think when you're on teams, you usually kind of know there's a level of like internal ranking, right? We know who's the star player, we know who's the top couple ones, and we kind of know the ones that are at the back of the team. And that was me, right? It wasn't for lack of a great attitude. It was just, first of all, I don't have the natural body type of a synchronized swimmer. I'm not naturally flexible. I'm not naturally as lean as a lot of synchronized swimmers are. It's like similar body type to like a ballerina, is very, very lean. And I just had a whole laundry list of things against me. And so when I was 18 years old and I was in grade 12, there was nowhere else for me to go. I would not have made the Canadian national team. I wasn't good enough. And there wasn't it started now. You can actually get scholarships at university in the States for synchronized swimming, but I didn't think that I was good enough to do that either. Sorry.
No worries.
And then I stayed involved in the sport, and that was really important. And I always say to people, like, I think sometimes if we have a love for something, if we completely cut it out of our life, it can feel like you lost a limb, you know? And so for me, what that meant was coaching little girls in synchronized swimming and doing it recreationally. Like, I wasn't doing it competitively. It was just a couple days a week, just for fun with my teammates. And so I was actually at this point in 2013 where I was going to university, I was working a couple jobs, and I was doing, some fun synchro on the side with my girlfriends. One day we were at a practice training session, and we were doing what we call in synchronized highlights. Highlights are when we create human pyramids underwater. We'll equator up to the surface, and we create like a spring where one of the athletes, the flyer on the top, does a flip and lands in the water. It's pretty incredible to watch, and we do this all without touching the bottom. However, this one day, what happened is my teammate slipped as she went up, and she fell straight on my head. We aren't like American football. There's no helmets in the water. There's no protection. And so you can imagine a human falling on top of you is a bit of an impact. Again, it was a complete accident. It was not her fault, but these are the things that just happen in sport, right? Initially, I felt okay, but I was driving home that night and I started to have this really bad headache and started to feel nauseous. And I had a midterm the next day. And I was actually trying to read the words on the paper in my textbook. And I knew it was English, but I didn't know what it said. It didn't compute in my mind. And so the next day I went to the doctor and I ended up finding out that I had concussion. I think in sport too often we kind of like throw that under a rug, like it's not a big deal, but I say concussions are really similar to struggling with your mental health. You know, like you look fine, right? I wasn't bleeding. I didn't have stitches, but like my brain was not okay. And really, there's not a lot that you can do to recover from a concussion other than rest. And if you tell an athlete to rest, like good luck. It's like the hardest thing that you can do, you know, to lay in a dark room for a month and not do anything. So that led to this real dark place in my life. And this all happened over my 21st birthday. The day after my 21st birthday, I was actually on the phone with a girlfriend of mine who was a previous teammate. You know, if you've ever been in sports, your teammates are also your friends, right? And she was wishing me happy birthday. And at the time, she gets a bing from Facebook Messenger on her computer. And she starts reading this message to me like in shock because the assistant national team coach of the Australian synchronized swimming team reached out to her and asked her if she, because she also had Australian dual citizenship, was there any chance that she would want to come out to Australia and try out for the Australian team in hopes to qualify the team for the 2016 Olympic Games. Keep in mind, this is 2013, so the year after the 2012 Olympics, and they're rebuilding the team. And as a friend and as a past teammate, I'm like, oh my God, this is amazing. You go for this. I believe in you. Like she was always a more talented athlete than me. But after about half an hour of like us celebrating her, she looks around and she says like, Danielle, you could do this too. Like, why not you? And I kind of laughed. I was like, are you kidding me? Like, not only do I have a concussion, I was never the best. I'm in Canada. There's like a million reasons why this is way, way too impossible, way too hard. But at that time too, I realized that this isn't an opportunity that comes around twice in a lifetime. You don't get that twice, right? And I as well had this moment where I imagined myself on my deathbed. I've always kind of been a bit of an old soul. And I imagine looking back on my life and the decisions that I made. We all have moments in our life where there's a fork in the road and we can go one way or the other. And I realized that if I walked away from this, that would have been because I was afraid of what people were going to think of me. I was afraid of being judged. I was afraid of failing. I was afraid of falling on my face. But if I didn't do it, I would be more afraid of regret, more afraid of wondering who I could have been. And even though the fear of people judging me, the fear of failure, the fear of all those things terrified me, the fear of regret scared me more. And so that little thought led to this huge sense of motivation all of a sudden to do something absolutely bloody crazy and go after this crazy, impossible, beautiful, insane dream. And like everyone thought I was crazy. Like I dropped out of university, I packed up 2 bags, like I like took out a loan, like I moved across the world, like I went all in, right? And then going all in literally in my actions, I also went all in my mindset and working on myself. And I was like, you know what? Maybe I'm not the best, but I'm going to be the one that has the best attitude. And like being an athlete that has a good attitude, it does go a long way. Being an athlete that's self-aware goes so far, right? And so I attribute all of that to the, you know, and plus like years of hard work, right? It's not like I had never done this sport before. Keep in mind that when I moved to Australia, I was already had 12 years of experience, right? Was never the best, but I was still very skilled. And so that plus putting myself in the right environment, plus taking a huge risk, plus working on my mind ended up leading me to the Olympic Games.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so you said you went to World Championships in 2015. That's the year before the Olympics. Is this the same team that ended up going to the Olympics together?
Yeah. So the year before the Olympics, how it works in World Championships is that you have to qualify your country. You have to have continental qualification for the Olympic Games. So for the Olympics in pretty much all sports, it's continental qualification. And what people don't, it's kind of weird, but if the 5 rings represent the 5 continents, and we all know that there's more than 5 continents, but they count North and South America as one continent. And they also count they call Oceania, which is Australia, New Zealand, and all the little islands, as another continent. And so we had to compete against New Zealand to qualify our team for the Olympics. And so that was really intimidating because they had a huge campaign to get, New Zealand improving, and we all had gone all in, and we really weren't sure up until like the final scores came in if we were going to beat them. And we obviously ended up beating them. But then the challenge was, and I think a lot of people don't realize this, if you qualify your team for the Olympics, it doesn't actually mean that you as an athlete is going to the Olympics. Like, you still need to qualify yourself individually. And so that was massively exciting, but that was kind of this moment of like, okay, like, let the games begin, because all of a sudden my teammates become my competitors, and it's like a few of us are going to be kicked out of the squad, and we have to go up against each other to see who is the top to actually get into the Olympic team. And that was a really intimidating process as well.
How did you handle that mentally? Because, I mean, you already have set yourself up saying, okay, I'm not the best athlete. And now going against all of these other teammates, how many other teammates did you have to beat out in order to make the Olympic team?
Yeah. So when we went into Olympic team trials, at that point, we were a 12-person squad. The 8 swim in the water at a time, and they were taking 9. So 3 of us wouldn't make it. But you also didn't want to be like 7, 8, or 9. You didn't want to be like at the back of the squad, right? Because that would mean that you could possibly not swim. Like, a lot of teams take a reserve, and like, it's still really cool if you go to the Olympics as a reserve, but like, ultimately you don't want to be like the one that goes to the Olympics and sits on the bench, right? And sometimes young athletes do that. Like, they'll sit on the bench for one Olympics and the next one they'll be competing. But that wasn't that wasn't really in my radar. I was like, I'm going to get on the team. And so one of the things that I really had to work on as well is, because when you're competing against your teammates and you're all going to the same training sessions, like, you can work hard in every training session, but like, you can't train more than you're training. You can't like put in more hours, because like, you're all at a limit. Also, like, as an athlete, we all know like you have a limit, and rest is important. Like, you don't want to overtrain. And so at that time, what I was realizing is like, I need to do something different to make sure that I get ahead of my teammates and I have some type of advantage, right? Because I have a lot of disadvantages, but there's some things that I can do really well. And so what I started to look at, and I always tell this to athletes, because I think this is such a great tool. In one aspect, I looked at my own strengths and weaknesses. I was like, okay, my weaknesses I'm obviously going to work on, but I'm going to turn up the dial on my strengths. How can I make the things that I'm really good at absolutely shine? And then what I also did is I looked at people that had either gone before me to Olympics or people that I looked up to in my field of sport. And I was watching what they did and they didn't do that made them successful. Because we can learn from the people that walk before us. Like, we are not the first ones in the world that have done anything great. Like, that's why podcasts and like online spaces are so incredible now. Like, learn from people that have done successful things. They leave clues. And so I was taking on all this information from what I was hearing from other people that had been to Olympics and been successful. And every single day I was journaling. At the end of the day, I would write down, what did I do well in training today? And what can I do better tomorrow? And I had 3 focuses every day that I would focus on. And then I would have a weekly focus, and I would have a monthly focus. And I would be really self-aware, because I wanted to be the athlete that I don't want to just show up at training and them tell me what I need to do. I want to show up and be like, this is what my intention is today. Coach, you give me any feedback that I need to have to be better, but this is what I've come here to focus. And I think like the proactive athletes, like, and the proactive human beings are the ones that end up like succeeding in life, because it's such a good skill to have.
Right? Oh my gosh. Okay. So obviously you're not going to the 2024 Olympics.
I'm not.
2016 was the one Olympic games that you went to, did you try to go to any further Olympic games, like 2021's Olympic Games?
Yeah. So I was actually in the trial process in 2019, 18 and 19 to try out for the team. And I also was kind of at this space too where I was having I wouldn't say midlife crisis, quarter life crisis. I was like 25, but I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do next. I think all athletes know that there is always an end to our career. In some sports, it's longer, in some sports, you have shorter careers. And the struggle that we had as well is we weren't paid athletes. I had to work on top of having to train. And so it's not like I had was in, financially abundant from my my sporting career. I was actually like really dead. It was dead. It put me in a detrimental space. And so I also realized, I'm 25 years old. I have this incredible like Olympian status. I've done these incredible things. Do I want to go to another Olympics, or do I want to kind of get my life started and do something with what I've learned? And so that's where for literally a couple years, I was grappling with like, what do I do next? And I had, was asking for signs from the universe. I was like asking for guidance. And eventually I made this decision that, you know what, I want to do something that's has a positive contribution to this world. And don't get me wrong, being an athlete is like amazing, but it's really selfish. You have to be selfish because it's all about you to do the best you can for your team, the best that you can for your country. And I realized that I wanted to help people. I wanted to do something that was beneficial to this world. And so that led me knowing that in 2019, that would be my final year, that I was going to retire, that I was going to walk away, and I was going to take my next steps, which has led me to all the work that I do now.
Okay, so 2019, you hang it up. Swimsuit back on the hook.
Yeah.
How did you handle that? Because exactly. How did you handle that? Because I know at 25, I was retiring from softball too. And my decision was go play pro, either in the States or in Australia, or go work for NASA on the Artemis program. I chose NASA. It was grueling for me to make that transition because I had been an athlete since I was 6. And I was like, I'm done being not just a softball player, but an athlete at a highly competitive level. Now, my story changed later in life, but how did you handle that?
I think it's always going to be hard, because what it is, it's identity shift. And it's really the death of an identity to become a new person, which in one way, like it sounds like you were similar to myself. Like I was so ready for a change. Like I had done it I was 25 or I was 26 officially when I retired, and I had done it for 18 years. Like that's a long time when you're, 26 years old. And as much as it scared me, I also craved to be somebody who wasn't identified by my sport. I remember I had a coach when I was in high school that she was really self-development focused, which I love now in hindsight. It's really beautiful. And one practice when we were stretching, she asked us, she's like, I want you guys to go around and tell me who you are. And you cannot use synchronized swimmer in that definition. And that like rattled my mind because I was like, if I am not a synchronized swimmer, like who am I? Like this is who I am, right? And I think that so many women, we identify with the jobs that we give ourselves, right? Or the things that we do, right? Some people do that with mother or an athlete or, an engineer. And it was totally mind blowing to have to separate that for myself. But I also felt ready. And I think the good thing about being an athlete that athletes have is like athletes can do hard things. We know how to do hard things. And even though the transition from being an athlete is being an athlete to not being an athlete wasn't physically hard. It's not like I had to physically push myself like I did in training. It was mentally challenging, but I had the capacity to realize it's like, okay, I've done hard things. I've been to the Olympics, like I've been to World Championships. I can figure this out. And so like that level of self-trust is so beautiful. And this is why I think like humans and women doing sport is like one of the greatest gifts that you can give yourself, because in life, we just don't have as much adversity as we used to have. Like most of us don't have to fight for our food. Most of us don't have to create shelters every night. Like we don't have as much challenge as people had hundreds of years ago. However, when you put yourself in sports, you put yourself in spaces that have to make you resilient. And resilience is one of the greatest gifts you can have as a human being, because in life, things happen, right? And you
Mhm.
also, I mean, sure, you have noticed, Amanda, like some people really suck at dealing with adversity and really like are not resilient. And if you can be a resilient human, you will succeed more in life. And so, kind of that mindset of being an athlete helps me in that transition. And I'm also grateful, like, I was ready. Like, some athletes have to leave because of injury, and that is way harder. It was my choice, but it was still a hard shift.
Oh yeah. Yes. Yes. I definitely remember having shed a lot of tears
Yeah.
during those days, right? But you knew it was easy to go into the next thing, which what was the next thing for you?
Yeah. So in the process, when I was in my final year of swimming, I was also writing my book, which was like, in hindsight, I was working like 3 days a week. I was training for world championships. I was also trying to like build my, like, what is now my business and write a book. That's a whole nother story about how that led me to burnout. But it was by the time I got to world championships, a few days later, actually like published my book. And the
Oh
funny
my
thing
gosh.
is, like, I'm so proud of that. But that was like, I had no idea it was after that. I was like, okay, well, if I put my book out there, then I'm going to figure it out. And so I didn't know that everything that I would do would be what it is today. But I just knew, okay, well, this is my next step, and I'm going to figure it out when I get there. And eventually that book led into more the online world, which, is courses and programs and retreats and podcasts and all of that, which is so beautiful because, I mean, you would know, like, it's such a beautiful way to reach everyone around the world. Like, there's never been
Yes.
such a magical time to do the work that we do, because I know people and have spoken to people and have had clients from every single place. And it's just a beautiful time to be doing all this work.
Okay, you mentioned the book. What is the title of your book?
It is called The Unlikely Olympian.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Okay. And that came out just after World Championships?
Just after World
Holy
Championships.
cow, you're nuts.
I
I
am
love
nuts.
it.
I am
This
nuts.
is this is how athletes think though. I
Right.
mean, we're constantly going for the next carrot is
Yeah.
really what it feels like.
Yeah.
And okay, so you wrote the book, The Unlikely Olympian. Love it. And now you're doing podcasts, you're doing retreats. Give us a little bit more about what that kind of work is and who you work with.
So, a part of the reason that I shifted is because I want to help. I wanted to share my story, but I wanted to help. And then I also realized, if I want to help women, I have to figure out what they're going through, because my life experience is my life experience, and it is very niche compared to other people. So, what are women struggling with, and what is stopping them? I know what was stopping me, and I know how I overcame it, but how can I help others? And so that led me into shifting into more programs and coaching and workshops. And in so many ways, it was so fluid because I had also been a synchronized swimming coach for 7 years. So I understand the concept of how to teach people, how different people learn, different personalities, bringing groups together. And it was something that I realized I started to really thrive at. And then it just naturally transitioned over the last few years and developed. And like, the world that I'm in now is also entrepreneurship. And I think a lot of athletes do go into entrepreneurship because it is a like growth oriented. Like, you cannot be an
Mhm.
entrepreneur and not constantly grow. Like, you have
Yes,
to.
true.
And athletes love to grow. Athletes love goals, right? And so growth
Mhm.
oriented humans move into entrepreneurship. And I love that aspect about what I do now, because I always have to grow. And it's like literally ingrained in my life. And I'm growing for myself, but also for my clients, and also for sharing my message. And so then last year, me and my husband started running retreats. A part of our
Mm.
journey too is we lived in Bali for a year. And so we had our clients asking us, they're like, can you run a retreat in Bali? And so obviously, for them, first couple of years of the decade, there was COVID. But once the borders opened, we started to get that all organized, and we started running retreats last year. And we've ran like 3 in the past 13 months, which has been such a beautiful experience. And we'll be running another one next year.
Oh my gosh. Okay. What is the journey that you take people through on retreat?
It's funny because when I ran my first retreat, I had never even been to a retreat, like a specific like
Ooh,
empowerment retreat. However, I felt like
alright.
I had lived my life in retreat, because also going to training camps and being an athlete is like putting yourself in physical spaces where you have to transform. And so it also felt really natural. And so what we do in our retreat process is it's 8 days and 7 nights. We bring women together from all around the world. We've had clients from Switzerland and Ghana and Australia, all over the US and Canada, and Poland. And it's such an international bunch. And what we do is we bring you to this incredible space where for a week, you don't have to work, you don't have to cook, you don't have to clean, you don't have to for the moms, you don't have to take care of your kids. And you actually get a whole week to just focus on yourself. And the transformation that you can have when you're, first of all, in a supportive environment, when you don't have to worry about your regular life, and when you are in a place where we push you in a healthy way to become better, like it is absolutely insane what can shift for women in a week. And like, it's been so beautiful to see that transformation another way. Because online is amazing. And I have had so much client transformation online, but it just happens quicker and faster and more potent when you're in person with people. Because we all feel, you feel
Mhm.
people's energy. Like it's different. And also, like, if someone's crying, you can reach out and hug them, you can laugh with them, you can dance with them, you can like hold their hand. Like, it's a different energy. And that's why, I think retreats will be something that we always do. It's so much work for us, but it's like 1,000,000% worth it, because it's like some of the best memories of my life.
Ah, yes. I think it's power in community is
Hmm.
really what it boils down to. When you're in person and you can touch the other person and
Hmm.
have that intimate connection, and then whatever you're growing from, everybody else gets to witness it
Mm.
and also grow from whatever you're experiencing too.
Mm.
It's so magical.
It's so much fun.
Especially when all of those priorities are taken away that we have to do on a daily basis, all of those hats that women have to wear
Hmm.
on a daily basis, cleaning the house, making sure the schedule is met, making sure your partner is on track, doing what they're supposed to be doing to help you. Yeah, all of those things. Oh
Hmm.
my gosh, I love it. And in Bali, no less.
And
Oh,
Bali is a really, really magical place. Like, it's, if you ever have felt called to go there, go there. Like, we had the privilege of living there for a year. Though they actually have their own religion, which is only on Bali. It's Balinese Hinduism, which is separate from Indian Hinduism. But it's typically
mhm,
that it's stemmed from India, and they deeply believe in karma. And I've never been to a place where, sometimes in certain religions, like there's some people that take it seriously and some people that don't. Everyone on this
mhm.
island that is Hindu is so devout in their belief. And it's that being on Bali is, I say, it's like living in real life Moana. Like, the island shifts and changes and moves. And like, if you respect her, she will respect you. If you disrespect her, she will disrespect you. She will give you what she needs. Like, it is a really magical place.
Oh my gosh, yes. I've been called to Bali several times. In fact, in October, I was hoping to host a retreat there for some spiritual growth for a bunch of women.
Yeah.
And I had to set that aside. So maybe next year, and you and I get to have that conversation after the podcast
Please.
episode so that I can talk to you more about what Bali holds for me.
Good.
Oh
Happy to
my
help.
goodness. Okay. So you have a retreat happening next year.
Mhm.
Give us a little tidbit on what to look for in your realm of the world for this.
Like, how to find it? Is that what you mean?
How to find it and how long will it be? Is it gonna
Okay.
be that 7
Yep.
nights, 8 days?
Yeah.
Is it only for women?
Yes.
Give us a little
Yeah.
teaser around that.
At this stage, we only work with women at our retreats. And it's interesting because it's me and my husband. He has an incredible story of his own. He grew up in a domestic violent household, and he always saw women oppressed at the hands of men. And so he has such a beautiful passion for helping women be empowered from a totally different perspective of my own. And he's a really like grounded, safe human being. And so me and him being there hold this really beautiful masculine and feminine. And a lot of people come to us as well because they say, I've never seen a women's retreat with a man there. Like it seems weird, but it's also super healing because a lot of women do have trauma or stuff around men. Not always, but they do. And so he holds a really beautiful space for that. So our retreat next year, it'll be the same 8 days and 7 nights. We don't have the exact dates yet because we're shifting locations. And so we're just finalizing a few of those details. I believe we might run 2 next year, but it'll probably be 1. And the way that it works with our retreat is like you can't book in. It's not like a hotel. Like if those dates don't work for you, you can't come the next week. And if you can only come for 3 days, that doesn't work either. Like you're all in or you're all out. And I think people don't always realize that with retreats. So if you're ever looking for a retreat, make sure you find a leader that you love and a space and a place that you love, but also know retreats are like, those are the dates and there's no wiggle room because we create a really beautiful energy bubble for transformation. It will be very similar to our past retreats. And if you have the chance to go look at my social media and my Instagram on my highlights or through my reels, we have some really, really beautiful images and videos from our retreats just to get a little bit of the concept of what happens. The videos have been so beautiful actually that over the past year, we've had like 40 million views. It's gone viral because of like some of the things that have been captured there. And we have like the most amazing photographer that we work with. And we do it really respectfully as well. It's super vulnerable, but it's like the greatest gift you can give yourself.
Oh my gosh, yes. Especially from, in my humble opinion, moms who are
Oh my God.
working. Yes, we need breaks.
Yes.
Women. Give yourself
love it when
a
moms come.
7-night, 8-day break.
It makes me so happy when I see moms there because like it's first of all, like the benefit that has for their children, like there's always a point in the retreat where the moms start missing their kids. But then what they always tell us on the other side is, oh my God, my kid said that I'm different. Like my kid feels it. I'm like, yes. Like if that's not motivation to take like a week for yourself, I don't know what is because it literally ripples into your family if you do that for yourself.
No doubt. How many people do you allow into this retreat?
We have small spaces, so our maximum is about 12. So we don't have them really big, which is nice. You can go to some retreats that are like 30 to 50 people. But for us, it's really important to make sure that every single one of we can get to know every single one of you and make sure that your intention is served and fulfilled at that retreat and you don't get lost in the crowd. At a certain point, you can start to it can be a crowd and we just want to make sure that we feel more like a family.
Yeah, I like that a lot.
Yeah.
I feel like my cap is 13 when it comes to that kind of keep it intimate scenario. So I like that. Danielle, thank you so much for sharing all that you've shared with us from your journey into being a synchronized swimmer all the way to all of your empowerment work for women and your retreats. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Amanda. It's been so fun to have this chat.